What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network, on Peacock, and on Vice. And today we're talking Season 3, Episode 10 of Dark Side of the Ring, entitled Blood and Wire, Onita's FMW. I will say right off the bat, of the 3 episodes we've seen so far in the second half of the 3rd season, I thought this was the weakest. It wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. The hardcore wrestling shit is not for me. The Nick Gage episode was interesting. This episode was interesting. It taught me a lot about FMW, very little of which I knew prior to watching this episode. So as far as getting me familiar with the promotion, what it was about, and stuff like that, Onita himself, Hayabusa's involvement with the promotion, among other people that were involved with it, I thought it was cool. I enjoyed it. The hardcore wrestling shit I still think is stupid as fuck. So this didn't really change my view on that, but it really did, talk about how it kind of set the stage and inspired ECW, deathmatch wrestling of today. I feel like, honestly, they should have swapped the episodes. They should have put this one in the first half of Season 3 and the Nick Gage one afterward, because I'm almost positive that in the Nick Gage episode, he said that he was inspired to become a deathmatch wrestler after watching ECW, but even before that, the FMW stuff and Onita's work and him and Terry Funk and whatever. So they probably should have swapped that in retrospect, but this was still a good episode. I enjoyed it for what it was, and I thought it was interesting. Not every story has to be tragic about someone dying. I mean, the plane ride from hell wasn't about that. The Canyon episode was from last week. The plane ride from hell episode had more to do with the controversy surrounding Ric Flair and shit like that, which has yet to die down, and I don't think it will for a while, and probably rightfully so. But at any rate, let's get right into it, guys. The first person we hear from on the episode is, of course, Atsushi Onita. And just as a preface here, I'm probably just going to attempt to pronounce the last names of a lot of these people, because the first names are just going to be lost on me. I can't pronounce it. I'm bound to botch them. So I'll probably just stick to the last names and attempt to pronounce those to the best of my ability. But we hear from Onita, and he talks about how he read about Giant Baba growing up, and that was how he fell in love with pro wrestling. We hear from Jericho, who, of course, narrates the episode, and he actually stars in the episode itself, because I think he did an FMW, a couple things in FMW, which we'll get into. We also hear from Terry Funk, obviously Onita, Terry Funk, Mick Foley, which was cool, among other people, so I thought that some of the daughters of some of the people that came about later on, the ring announcer turned promoter, as well as Hayabusa. So at any rate, the narrator Chris Jericho talks about how the Giant Baba and Antonio Inoki started All Japan Pro Wrestling, AJPW, and New Japan Pro Wrestling, NJPW, respectively. They talk about how the Funks were very popular in Japan, specifically Terry Funk. Jericho says that Funk is one of the most well-liked wrestlers of all time. And it was really cool to see Terry Funk on this episode, because it's been well documented that he had a lot of health issues earlier this year. Hopefully he's doing better. I haven't heard an update on him recently. Clearly, this was filmed a while ago, probably before he had the health issues, but it was cool that he was well enough to do this at the time that they recorded it, so I appreciated that. Again, like I said, we hear from Mick Foley, too, who talks about the wrestlers being sent to Japanese apprenticeships, and I guess Onita really liked Terry Funk's style, and Terry Funk said he wanted to be an idiot, too. He was as much of an idiot as Funk was as far as doing the crazy shit was concerned. I guess Onita refused to lose to someone at one point, and the promoter just teamed up on him with a bunch of people and just beat the shit out of him, which was weird. So from there, Terry Funk stood up for him, and they, again, from there became friends, and that was how they formed a bond and respect for one another. Onita talks about how he kind of realized fans were more into hardcore matches than they were regular matches, and that was what made him realize, maybe there's a market for this. And he recalls getting kicked in the face in one match, like a bar brawl or something. I forgot with who. Maybe it was Terry Funk. And he recalls getting kicked in the face by a woman's heel, or a boot, or the heel of the boot, or whatever it was. And he realized that the fans were really excited by this. And he's thinking, wow, maybe there's more to this, and maybe we can make some money off of this. And, to his credit, I hate the deathmatch shit, but he did make a lot of money, at least according to him. Made a lot of money, made millions, a lot of cars. We'll get into that. But prior to that point, he, I guess, shattered his kneecap. He had to retire from the ring, or at least at that point, I guess. He had challenged MMA fighter Ayongi, Ayongi, and it drew a lot of massive crowds because it was kind of like a clash of styles. And I guess not unlike the Inoki Muhammad Ali match from obviously years earlier, right? Because this was like the 90s, and I think that was the 80s, if not early 90s. But that was a failure as far as like the match itself went. But I guess Onita and Inagi had like entertaining matches that were entertaining enough where they drew massive crowds, and it gave him confidence that FMW could work. And he talks about how fans get bored with just one thing. If you give them just wrestling or just this or that, they get bored with it. So he learned as a kid that barbed wire is a scary thing, and you can use that to your advantage in a match. And they started featuring more and more dangerous matches, and I guess one of the matches saw a woman's gear get lit on fire, and Foley recalls that story, how it burned through her flesh, which was just disgusting to think about. We also hear from Ricky Fuji, I believe, or Fufi. Or I don't know how you pronounce that exactly. I think Fuji would be Fugi or Ji, right? So Ricky talks about how they brought more guys in FMW, including himself. Jericho's first match there was in the main event. We hear from Sabu, that was another talking head on this episode. He talks about getting stitches and getting scars, and we see the scars. Onita was obviously the most over in that promotion. He was the leader. He was like the Cody Rhodes, of AEW to, Onita's FMW or whatever. At least at that point, because Cody Rhodes is being booed now. Like, they loved this guy for what he was doing, creating the promotion. He would cry after his matches, get really emotional. He would leave to Wild Thing, which I think is why Moxley came out to it for his match, a couple of months ago. And that's why he comes out to it now, I think was inspired by that. Because they used to leave to Wild Thing. So I thought that was cool. As a tribute, I think that's awesome. And the song, it's just a great song, and it's a great song in general. So they talk about him doing a fire match with Tarzan Goto against Sabu and the original Sheik, his uncle. The ring went up in flames. I feel like it was Iron Sheik maybe, or the original Sheik, that had I think he couldn't get out in time or something, and he had burns on 60% of his body, which is just fucking disgusting. Onita admits that he got a big head. I mean, no shit. Based on how he talks of himself on this episode, that's really no surprise. But he got a big head out of it, and he got a lot of success, which is why he had a big head about his success. But, he made a lot of money. He said he made around $2 million a year, according to him. Bought a 4-bedroom house, bought 5 cars. And part of that was because the Yakuza, like the Japanese mafia, I guess, were in charge of these Japanese arenas. And a lot of their sponsors, quote-unquote, were missing their pinkies because they were involved with the Yakuza. Foley mentioned this, and he noted that, and how it was kind of off-putting to him, but he didn't really have much of a choice. He wasn't comfortable with it, but didn't really have much of a choice. Sabu recalls getting beat up one time by the Yakuza backstage, I guess because he threw his opponent in front of them, not knowing it was them. And they went backstage and beat the shit out of him or something, or at least tried to, which was crazy. Anyway, Funk tried to change the perception of the company when he came in. Didn't know where the explosives in the ring were. And I guess Onita talked about he felt like a god, and they had their death match, that the Moxley Omega death match, the barbed wire flaming death match, or whatever the fuck they call it, was inspired by earlier this year from Revolution. Like when the buzzer went off, the ring would explode, and Onita won. And instead of leaving as the buzzer was about to go out, he tried to wake Funk up. It didn't work. So he covered his body instead, and the ring blew up, so he shielded his body. It came across a lot better here than the Omega Moxley finish did at Revolution. I will tell you that much. That was actually really cool. I mean, I wasn't watching FMW at the time, obviously. But this came across like a cool moment, and it was great storytelling. The Moxley Omega one was just fucking dumb. With Eddie Kingston in there, that was just stupid. Jericho calls it the best babyface move in all of wrestling, and he called Onita a genius for that. I guess Funk wasn't satisfied with the payoff to it, not as far as like the payoff, like the finish to the match, but as far as how much money he actually made for it. He made from that match, considering how much he had to put his life on the line for it. Onita was massively successful around this point. He did announce his retirement in 1994, which was like when the promotion started to go downhill because they didn't have their biggest star at that point. Hayabusa was seen as the heir apparent to Onita. He was also willing to do extreme stuff, and we hear from his daughter, whose name I didn't write down. I forgot to write her name down, but the daughter feels that he fit right in that hardcore wrestling group, and he really thrived around that point. But Onita leaving really left a huge hole, and from there, ring announcer Sashi Arai, I think I thought it was Shirai or something along those lines. It's Arai. Again, don't know how you pronounce his name. But the ring announcer takes over. We hear from his daughter, Shell. And the daughter, Shell, talks about how he took over the company and how he had no knowledge about running a company. And that's when it really started to take a turn for the worse because he had no idea what the fuck he was doing. And as a result, they started to draw less and less people. Onita wanted to come back in 95 as a heel and do a feud between the old FMW and the new FMW, but tensions escalated backstage. He wasn't getting along with the powers that were at that time, because he wanted to do more of an entertainment style. Fuyuki also took charge of the creative direction around that point, and he wanted to do more entertainment style shit like WWE, except way worse. So they stopped doing death matches, which was what the company was all about, and the ring announcer turned promoter told Onita to quit. They met with him backstage. Onita thought it was about something else, like it was this backstage meeting. He was told to come in, and instead it was about them basically wanting him to quit. We also see the Hayabusa botch in the moonsault in 01, which is just fucking disgusting. I don't know if I've ever actually seen that before, and I wish they didn't show it. I guess it indicates how serious of a bump it was, but he was trying to do like a backwards moonsault, like what Jericho does, the lion salt. But just one slip on the ropes caused him to land on his forehead while he was going backwards, and he got paralyzed. Didn't die, he got paralyzed, which Terry Funk argues is worse. He would have rather died, he said. Obviously, he got really depressed afterward, had to retire. And from there, FMW was even in a worse spot, and they started to decline even more because their biggest star couldn't go anymore. Arai, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, and if it's not, I apologize. He struggled to pay people. In the dying days of FMW, he borrowed money from loan sharks, including the Yakuza, and he couldn't pay them back. So he and his wife divorced. His wife divorced him, and FMW went down the tubes. They had to close it down, I believe, and he killed himself. And part of the reason why he did that, and I guess he called Hayabusa up the day before to tell him that he was going to do it. Hayabusa said, no. Did it anyway, went to a park, tied himself up with a necktie, and killed himself, was because I guess he wanted to pay off the Yakuza. And he felt, hey, if my wife can get all the money, then they can pay him back. And even that wasn't enough. It was not enough for the Yakuza to be satisfied or to be paid back or whatever. And she continued to make payments after that, which was just, it's so sad. So the family, I don't know if they still have to pay now, but they still had to pay for a long time after that, I believe. And they showed up at their house, and the daughter talks about how the Yakuza had their locks changed. They had to fucking leave. They had to leave their home because they couldn't afford to pay for that home anymore, and the husband was gone, or the dad was gone, or whatever. And the daughter blames Onita for using Arai. So she kind of blames Onita for that, and Onita feels it was the Yakuza's fault. He's like, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but it was definitely the Yakuza's fault, and he takes credit for hardcore wrestling and all this other stuff. FMW, I guess, attempted to make a resurgence like a decade later. Hayabusa was there for and it didn't work. Hayabusa was there to not there at that show, I don't think, but he was at a show in 2015, I think it was, to, I don't know, it was like a tribute type thing or whatever, and he actually got to walk again on that show. He was able to walk again, really emotional moment, as you could probably imagine, but it was less than a year later that he actually passed away. In a home accident, fell in his home or whatever, suffered a severe brain hemorrhage or whatever the exact terminology would be, and he died, which is really, really sad. So again, we hear from Onita talking about how he takes credit for creating hardcore wrestling. Sabu says that he took what he learned and took it to ECW with him years later. Terry Funk, when asked about what he thought about Onita, he flips off the camera and says that he loves him. So I guess he hates him and loves him. And Onita compares himself to close out the episode. He said, Hulk Hogan is Hulk Hogan. The Giant Baba is Giant Baba. Andre the Giant is Andre the Giant. And Atsushi Onita is Atsushi Onita. So, comparing himself to Hogan, Baba, Inoki, and Andre. Maybe it wasn't Andre. Maybe it was Inoki I'm thinking of. But still, quite the way to close out the episode. And they didn't mention it here, but FMW, I guess, was revived earlier this year after he saw the success, quote unquote, I don't know, of the Omega Moxley match back at Revolution in AEW in 2021. So I don't know if they're running shows now. I guess they ran a show a couple of months ago, I think over 4th of July weekend at a fucking supermarket or some shit, which was interesting. I thought they would mention that here in a quick title card, and it was so long ago that this episode has been in the can for so long, they definitely could have included a graphic saying that FMW has been back, because this whole episode is about not just one man, but rather, the entire promotion. But anyway, aside from that, I thought this was a good episode. It was interesting. I learned a lot. It wasn't the most exciting by any means, but it didn't really need to be. I thought it was good. And yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say about it aside from check it out. All the Dark Side of the Ring episodes are great. I do think it was the weakest one compared to the first two in the second half of this third season. But it was still good. I knew really nothing, next to nothing about the FMW promotion going into this episode, so it taught me a lot about that. The drama that went down at FMW, Onita himself, deathmatch wrestling and the origins of it. So, I thought it was good. I liked it. Very depressing ending there. A lot of these, obviously. It's fucking, it's called Dark Side of the Ring for a reason. But the whole Hayabusa thing, which has been public knowledge forever, mostly everyone knew about that, but it's still sad to see it and hear them talk about it and shit. But good stuff here for the Blood and Wire Onita's FMW episode of Dark Side of the Ring. Thank you guys for checking out my review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, and share the video. And subscribe for more daily content. We have Dark Side of the Ring reviews up every single weekend. We got a lot of content going up right now. With What If ending next week, that's going to be closing out soon. But we've been doing Marvel What If reviews for months now. Before that, we did WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki. So check out all the Marvel reviews if you're into that type of thing. As far as the wrestling goes, we do Dark Side of the Ring reviews, like I said, every single weekend. Raw Talk reviews, SmackDown audio reviews, Talking Smack reviews, Q&A videos every single Wednesday, answering your questions, WrestleRant radio excerpts on Thursdays. We do interviews. I just talked to Angelo Dawkins a few days ago, Davey Richards. We're going to have more interviews going up in the days to come, among a lot of other cool stuff in the remainder of this month, live reaction videos and stuff like that. So if you're not already subscribed, please do so. I would greatly appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.